Hello friends, today I am going to teach about the topic is transmembrane enzyme linked receptors, nothing but kinase linked receptors. So this is the class of receptors utilized primarily by peptide hormones. The transmembrane enzyme linked is receptor is different from the ligand gated and G protein coupled receptors because it acts as a proteins mediators for cell growth. So growth hormones, examples are insulin and epidermal growth factors. So transmembrane enzyme link receptors have the enzymatic properties. So it has the enzymatic properties, and the commonest protein kinase is nothing but receptor tyrosine kinase. So this is the commonest receptor tyrosine kinase, protein kinase. Examples, these receptor tyrosine kinase includes, examples are insulin, epidermal growth factors and nerve growth factors. These are the example for receptor tyrosine kinase. So here I am giving a diagram. Here this is the epidermal growth factor, so growth cell, this is the cell. So when this is the hormone binding site, and agonist is nothing but peptide hormone. Peptide hormones are nothing but insulin, epidermal growth factors and nerve growth factors are the agonist in this transmembrane enzyme linked receptors. So when the agonist, here when the agonist bind to the enzyme linked receptor undergoes dimerization process, means like a peptide hormone, means like insulin or epidermal growth factors, this is the agonist. So when the agonist bind to the hormone binding site, so this is the hormone binding site. When epidermal peptide hormone bind to the receptors, so this is the enzyme linked receptor, nothing but undergoes dimerization process, means it undergoes two phosphate tyrosine kinase phosphated groups. In enzyme linked and G protein, it have the single agonist form, but here growth hormone transmembrane enzyme linked receptors, it have undergoes dimerization, means coming doubling. So means tyrosine kinase phosphates undergoes doubling process. So it is the receptor site, and it have the alpha helical transmembrane, and it undergoes dimerization process, means tyrosine kinase phosphate groups. So in these phosphate groups, how the phosphate moves to the tyrosine, means how the dimerization process occurs, means the ATP converted, means adenosine triphosphate is converted into the adenosine diphosphate plus phosphate group. So one phosphate group is outed. So this phosphate group is combines with the tyrosine group. So mainly the growth hormone increases the cell growth. So binding of agonist to the receptors. So how the autophosphorylation, in this it will takes autophosphorylation, means the ATP is converted into the adenosine diphosphate plus phosphate groups, autophosphorylation groups. How the phosphate group move to the tyrosine kinase and bind. Here the conversion of ATP to ADP. So the phosphate group is outed. So in this autophosphorylation, the phosphate group is moves to the tyrosine kinase. So and here the phosphate is bind to the tyrosine tyrosine kinase group. So after phosphorylation of tyrosine kinase, then the activation of tyrosine kinase will active. So after dimerization, it undergoes the tyrosine group. So in this undergoes of the dimerization process, the tyrosine kinase will become inactive form. So after autophosphorylations, when the phosphate groups moves to the tyrosine kinase and bind to the tyrosine kinase, it will active. So tyrosine phosphorylated tyrosine kinase will active. So the proteins are responsible for the cell growth moves towards to phosphorylated tyrosine kinase. So why the growth hormones means nothing but proteins. The proteins are mainly responsible for the cell growth and moves to the phosphorylated tyrosine kinase. So after phosphorylation of proteins, it involves in a cell growth. Then after phosphorylation will takes place means tyrosine kinase phosphated group is bind and the phosphate is bind to the tyrosine kinase. It will undergoes the cell growth. So the proteins mainly helpful for the cell growth. This is the explanation of the transmembrane enzyme linked receptor. Thank you.